and good to have you with us on the 9 p.m. edition of the Urban Debate. Viewers, much has been said about the city of Mumbai and the way it's been reporting its cases in the last couple of days. It's been presented as the good news by the Maharashtra government, and actually a part of it is good news. It does look like maybe finally Mumbai's worst is over and we're ready to come out of the woods. But it's not going to be an easy task even from here on, and we cannot afford to let our guard down. Now, why do I say it? Because initially the number of daily positive cases also fell. Now, while that's largely remained at the same level, the encouraging statistic has actually been the time it's taking now for Mumbai to see a doubling in its cases. And as that time becomes higher, that just reflects that we are doing better. The other good statistic as far as Mumbai is concerned has been the rate of infection, or as it's called R0 by our experts. That actually yesterday fell below 1. This is a good sign, which means that the spread of the infection is slowing down. But let me also tell you that we can't let our guard down because it's a highly populated city. We have a huge amount of challenges. It's an extremely congested, densely populated city. And just outside Mumbai, in the MMR region, the problem still continues. And we are so deeply connected with the Mumbai metropolitan region, with people going in and out for work reasons, staying in one part, working in the other, that unless an entire area recovers, we are not out of the woods. But I don't want to really talk about the improvement specifically. We'll wait and watch for a few more days to really take a call. I want to talk about what the Sero survey that was conducted in Mumbai has thrown up as results. Now, this was conducted by the Mumbai civic body, BMC, along with central agencies. The Sero survey is to give you a sense of just how many people in an area have now been infected, have the antibodies, which is a sign that at some point they did get the infection, to give you a sense of the extent of spread. Now, the one that was conducted in Mumbai, roughly about 7,000 samples, showed that 40% of the people, 40% of this 6,936 samples had antibodies, which means at some point they had contracted some kind of a COVID. 57% of those living in slum areas, when they were sampled, 57% of those had antibodies. The rate of infection or the number of cases were actually lesser in non-slum areas, where it was about 16% of people living in housing societies who had been exposed to virus. And this is self-explanatory. I don't need to tell you why there is this huge difference between slum areas and the housing society, purely from the congestion point of view. A large number of people were asymptomatic, and an interesting insight was the difference in the gender statistics. Now, there are many questions. The first one is what a lot of people are asking today: is Mumbai headed towards herd immunity? That so many of us get the antibodies and that becomes a tool to finally beat or tackle coronavirus. Is that so? At what point can we comfortably say that the city is achieving the herd immunity levels? And what does that really mean? Does that change anything for us? This, of course, will be the big talking point this evening as experts join me. And of course, I first want to understand how should one even read this Sero survey? What does it really mean? So let's say good evening to the panelists who are with me this evening. Dr. Jayanti Shastri, Head of Microbiology at Nair Hospital and Head of Molecular Lab at Kasturba Hospital. Dr. Rahul Pandit, Director for Critical Care at Fortis Hospital in Mulund and a member of the COVID-19 Task Force in Maharashtra. And Dr. Shashank Joshi, Dean, Indian College of Physicians, Lilavati Hospital, and a member of the COVID-19 Task Force in Maharashtra. Dr. Rahul Pandit, let me begin with you. Help our viewers understand what these results really, how should we read them?
Look, it is very difficult to sort of interpret this result for the whole of the city, while we would like to understand that 3 clusters or 3 wards where this survey was conducted would be a representation of 1.2 or 1.3 crore people is very, very difficult. When you want to actually have an analysis based on a Sero survey, you need to at least measure 1% of the population to be bare minimum to be able to achieve some sort of a conclusion from that. but it's a starting point, and the results are quite startling. That in slums, at least 1 out of the 2 person is actually infected, and in the non-slum areas, it is probably 1 in 5. So the results are startling. I think we need to look a little bit more deeper into this survey and see what was the population of those pockets through which the survey was taken, how many samples were taken up from the slum area and the non-slum area, and that would probably throw a little bit more light onto understanding this and whether we could extrapolate that to the entire city and its population.
You say it's concerning from what point of view, Dr. Pandit? And you know what we do understand is the breakup between the slum areas and the housing societies, and even in slums, we do know that they didn't really go to the containment zone. So it was in the other zones where the sampling was done. But what would be a concerning factor for you?
So the concerning factor is that even in densely populated areas, it is quite self-explanatory that you have densely populated areas which are slums where you would probably not have
Yeah.
a lot of social distancing and so on and so forth. The results are quite self-explanatory. You still have every second person who has developed antibodies, and really I need to know the density of the population, because if that's the case, are we actually having a similar sort of a pattern
Okay.
in the other densely populated areas of the city or not? But that's certainly what we are seeing in the hospital. We are not seeing that large number of patients presenting to the hospital. Neither have the tests basically which have been done right now, the RT-PCR tests, and we are doing more than 6,000-7,000 tests every day, and around 1,000, approximately 1,000 odd are coming positive. So that's certainly not reflective of what we are seeing in the RT-PCR, which is the gold standard right now for testing people. Whereas antibodies is something which you do after the disease has happened, or sort of the patient has got better, maybe around 13th or 14th days, or in the asymptomatic patient, he doesn't even realize that he's been infected, and then when you do antibody, that's when you catch the antibody. So this is the concern, that are we actually reflective of the entire population or not?
Okay, fair enough. I get your point. Let me also bring in Dr. Shashank Joshi. Dr. Shashank Joshi, what's your view? Because, initially also, not just in Mumbai, but in Delhi and other cities, we were told that a high number of the patients who were testing positive were asymptomatic. So it is quite possible that many recovered without even realizing that they had COVID and are now showing these antibodies?
So I think I tend to agree with my colleague Dr. Rahul Pandit that this is a discordant result. This is an unusual result. Nowhere on planet Earth such a result has been found. Spain, they analyzed almost 60,000 people and they got a very low antibody positive rate. In New York, they analyzed more than 1 lakh people. 1% of our population or 2% of the population is minimum we need. Mumbai has 24 wards. These wards were all diverse. One was high prevalent, one was medium prevalent, one was low prevalent. Still, in the slum population, they got almost an identical result. I need to see the full text of the publication to take a deep dive in this, but this is a surprise result, at least in the slum population. I'm not surprised about the housing societies. Around 20% is what we are expecting our antibody levels to be there. But what we are seeing in clinical practice and what this survey has reported is very divergent. And therefore, it actually raises more questions than giving answers. It is definitely showing some ray of hope as a silver lining that some degree of antibody is being produced. But we need to look at it, what type of antibody was done. Dr. Shastri needs to elaborate whether they had used a mixed test of IgG, IgM, or was it purely IgG? Was the titer of the neutralizing antibody estimated, or is it still awaited? Because apparently they are doing a subset of that, is what we read in newspapers. Ideally such surveys should be first reported in a research journal and then they should be put out in the media, because it is very difficult to make planning when we are looking at unlocking the city. And therefore, though it is showing some sign and signal that some sort of social distancing was not followed in the slums, that is a no-brainer. But I think this result is a little too high for me to believe. And unless and until I study the full report in a form of a research publication published in an index journal, I will take it with a pinch of salt. And I'm skeptical about it. This needs to be reproduced and it has to be, serially seen what is the prevalence of
Yes.
it.
Yes, I get your point. I just want to though say that some of the earlier sero surveys that were done, for example, there was one done in similar crowded slum areas in Ahmedabad that reportedly showed 40% had antibodies, and even the one at that point of time that was reported in Mumbai's Dharavi said that 36% of the samples at that point of time, and this was earlier, had shown signs of antibodies. So from that to now say over 50%, is that a little too much? Is there something that needs deep dive or something that's not believable? Dr. Jayanti Shastri, what's your view? Okay, I believe that Dr. Shastri, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes, Dr. Shastri, what's your view on the numbers that have come out? Would you be careful to read the numbers and perhaps wait for details or maybe another 2-3 rounds of such surveys to be done?
Well, this particular round which we have done in the slums is very promising. It only goes to show that there has been an asymptomatic transmission, and that is why we have got 57% antibodies in the slum. However, in the non-slum, it is only 16%, which means that because of social distancing, wearing masks, people are scared to come out. So probably the exposure is less. However, in the slums, this is good news that it is 57%.
Would you like to, elaborate on that? Because we also have two panelists here who are saying that they are a little concerned about this number and surprised by it, and perhaps would want to see the data before they actually believe it.
So the data is there on the TIFR website. They are free to see. We have screened about 2,249 slum dwellers in the F North area. In the M West, it is 1,900 and odd. In the R North, so the selection was high burden, medium burden, and low burden. So that's how the screening was done. And the best test has been used, that is the chemiluminescence.
Okay, so let me ask you this question then, Dr. Shastri. Is Mumbai, at least in the slum areas, headed towards herd immunity?
So how much is herd immunity? We don't know. The senior epidemiologist in the early part of the pandemic said 60, considering the R naught to be about 2.3, the 60% should be the population should have antibodies in order to say that they have developed herd immunity. Now time will tell us whether 60% is herd immunity or more. What is more important is, do these antibodies persist beyond 3 months? That is the question currently, because what is published literature is saying that antibodies do not persist for a very long time, and what we are detecting are the total antibodies. We have another round in the month of August. Around 10th to 12th of August, we will be starting the second round. At that time, again, we will be collecting the blood samples and doing the IgG chemiluminescence assay, and we will be comparing both the prevalence.
Okay, that's interesting. Dr. Pandit, would you want to come in on what Dr. Shastri is saying here?
So I agree that the main concern here is that whether these antibodies actually give you any immunity passport, if that's what we are looking at. The immunity passport only comes up if you have something what we call as a neutralizing antibodies. And these could be a total antibodies, total IgG antibodies which have been measured. We also know from the papers which have been published in the medical literature that the antibodies could fall as high as 28 to 30 fold in the next 3 or 4 months. So we really don't know whether the memory of this illness is going to be prevalent in the people or not, and in the immune cells, and whether we would actually have no antibody or no protection against the virus at all in a few months' time. So that would be a very interesting thing to look for in the next few months. I still would say that a population of 6,000 or 7,000 odd people in 3 wards is not a reflection of the entire Mumbai city. And I would really like what Dr. Joshi said. I completely agree with my colleague that we would probably, like all 24 wards, we would probably need to collect at least 1% of the population of each of the ward between the slum and the non-slum areas, and do a large amount of zero survey to understand whether we are actually anywhere near the figures which we are getting right now. None of us are questioning the methodology or the way with which the results have come out. We are actually very surprised the results have come out this way. So this is that's what we are talking about. We are not talking about what method was used to look at the antibodies. I'm sure the best methodology was employed by Madam Shastri, but that doesn't really tell us what we are seeing in the clinical practice is completely different.
So what we are also going to do as part of this study.
Okay, interesting. Yes, go
Hello.
ahead.
So as part of this study, a subset of the samples.
Go ahead, Dr. Shastri.
So as part of the study, a subset of the samples, we are also going to look for the neutralizing antibodies. And what the literature says is even small amount of neutralizing antibodies is adequate to confer protection. So this is another thing which we are going to do as part of the study. I do agree that we must do in 24 wards, but let me tell you, it was extremely difficult for us to even do in these 3 wards, because you need to have, depending upon the cases, a proper representation of the samples also. The sampling methodology has to be random. With all this, we have kept it in mind and we have gone ahead with it. So anyways, we really need a lot of manpower, as well as it's not really easy to do public health research.
No, of course, I understand. And for a city as large as Mumbai, as diverse with various pockets, designed and living differently, of course, extensive research is also required. Yes. But let me try and understand. There are 2 aspects. One, of course, is to say that we need to do a lot more of research before we start analyzing these numbers as a more broad-based numbers. But Dr. Shashank Joshi, if we were to say, so even for these areas, let's just say that in one specific zone, 57 people have got antibodies. What does that even mean even then? Because what we are saying is that these antibodies may not even stay for too long and they go away in a few months. Then what is our learning or key takeaway from this data point?
So we are in the second season of Corona and we are learning new about this disease. This virus is predictably unpredictable. Immunology of this virus is very unpredictable. The antibodies really don't represent the true immunity. It is a T cell response. Even for vaccines, we'll be seeing the T cell response, which is more relevant. But for serosurveillance, for epidemiological purposes, public health purposes, antibodies, neutralizing antibodies are good enough. So this result is reassuring from 2 ways. That it tells us that in the crowded clusters of slums, there is some degree of immunity. Remember, none of these patients had RT-PCR positive. So they were asymptomatic, they had the disease and they recovered it. It shows that probably the Indians have a very robust immune system and they can conquer the virus without even knowing it. That is one interpretation we would look at. But as I said, I would not like to look at a website of a institute. I would like to see the full text publication and read it to really understand this in better granularity. I trust their methodology must be absolutely above board. But as I said, the number of samples is small and we need a serial monthly follow-up of the antibodies to see the decay of antibodies. I'm happy that they are doing a monthly follow-up also on these cases. Public health research is difficult, but from the city of Mumbai, if I trust these numbers, it is a reassuring result. For herd immunity, most people think it is 70%. Some people may say it is 60%. We are almost there. But I think that will make us complacent. And I think the only thing we can say is that our slum care needs to be more aggressive and they need to mask and distance and do their sanitization better, because they have friction points like common toilets, common drinking points. They need addressal. So I think it's a very important public health message which this survey gives us an insight. So for city planners, it is very useful insights. That's all I could say.
Okay, Dr. Pandit, would you want to add to that? How, these sero surveys, let's just say the sero surveys that's done in any area, what is it, the takeaway, how does it help us in designing our policies? Basis the data, can we decide on how much we should lock, unlock, what kind of precautions we should take?
So I'm just going to talk about a survey. One more point which was mentioned, that the gender disparity was seen here between more females having positive antibodies rather than males. Now that is exactly opposite of what we are seeing in the clinical practice. In the clinical practice, we are seeing more males, up to double the number of males than what the females are getting infected with. So I'm quite surprised at that. Now coming up to your question of how the town planners or how basically an antibody survey helps you in planning things. It helps you in planning basically your public health resources, which areas you would like to basically concentrate your public health resources or not. The town planners will basically be able to understand the lacunae in the system, which are basically showing this high prevalence of antibodies, and would be able to do a better planning with that. It also helps us into vaccinating and vaccination programs as to which areas you would like to target first and get the vaccination done. So there are a number of repercussions of a survey like this. But again, I'm coming to the same point, Tanvi, back to that. It is not a representation of my city of Mumbai. It is just a minuscule number in front of 1.3 crore people. And I would not make any assumptions from this. Absolutely no assumption from this. It is just sort of a sample pilot study, which I would take it up, that it shows you some sort of a direction. That's all.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, but let me actually bring in Dr. Shastri on the gender, difference in the statistic. Dr. Shastri, what's your own reading of the fact that, the numbers that that the survey shows that women are probably more prone and higher number of them were infected?
We said that it was a coincidental finding because we did random sampling. So when you do a random sampling, it depends upon, there is no bias in it, right? So in a random sampling, it so happens that, more number of women get tested, and that is how probably, we just said that it is a coincidental finding. It has not much of a relevance.
Can I make a comment, Tanu?
And we have also
all right, that's an interesting thing, and actually that gives a lot of clarity as well, so that we don't overread into the data that comes in. Yes, go ahead, please.
So basically, that's what we have said, that it is the women who go out, they go out for shopping, for, so there is a little more socialization also by women. So that may be the contributing reason that they have got exposed to the virus.
Can I make a point?
Dr. Joshi, you wanted to make a point?
Yeah. So the gender work which Dr. Shastri and Dr. Pandit alluding to has some insights from biology. Number one is that the men have testosterone, which upregulates a factor called TMP-RSS, which activates the ACE2 enzyme, which triggers the lung storm. So men get worse disease. And there is a ratio of 2:1, men is to women. So women are protected because they have estrogens. So the biological basis of this is very well known. As an endocrinologist, I can very confidently tell you that there are enough studies across the world now telling this gender bias which has crept in. And that, to some extent, from this random sampling appears to be true, that women have generated better antibodies and probably their estrogens might be protective. But of course, as I said, this is all hypothetical and speculative, but there is some rational and reasoning to the gender part of this basis. There is some hormonal basis to this.
Okay, so let me actually take this conversation a step further. And as all three of our panelists agree, that a lot more needs to be done for us to have any larger broad-based takeaway for the city of Mumbai. But yes, this is where the sample has been done, and this is the data that and the response that it suggests. But in the last few days, we have seen a set of encouraging statistics coming out. Dr. Shastri, let me begin with you. Does it look like the worst may be over for Mumbai?
See, my lab gets samples from Nayar Hospital, Kasturba Hospital, and from the municipal peripheral hospitals. number of samples over the last week has declined, definitely declined, and the percentage positivity has also declined. Now it is for the physicians to tell us how does it translate to the cases they are treating. But as far as the lab is concerned, lesser number of samples and lesser positivity, which is what I'm seeing in the last 5 days.
Okay, no, that's fair enough. But if we take the doubling days statistic that has been presented and that we have right now, which has gone over 70 days, the fact that our rate of infection seems to have fallen below one. Many experts in the past have said, well, that's a sign that things are beginning to turn. Perhaps we are peaking right now or over the peak already. Would you agree with that kind of an analysis?
Well, that is what the statistics is showing, but most of the people are still at home, right? There are all those who absolutely need to go for work are the ones who are setting out. But there are a fair number of people who are still at home. They are still not venturing out. So I am a little worried to even make a statement that worst is over.
Okay, all right. Dr. Pandit, do you want to comment on this? Because especially this week, there's been a lot of chatter on Monday. We had only 700 cases that were reported, although that number then went up to about 1100 the next day. But there is some amount of hope coming in. Now, I myself, keep reminding our viewers that we shouldn't let our guard down. But are we moving in an encouraging direction?
I think we are absolutely moving in an encouraging direction. No question about that. I think Mumbai peaked a few weeks ago, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it plateaued at around that 1100 to 1400 mark for the last 3-4 weeks. And now we are starting to see the numbers go down. All the statistics are showing the same thing. And as you rightly said, I don't want to repeat the same thing, but this is the time when people can become complacent, to massively start coming out of their houses, and then we may actually have a second peak, which is what we need to do. We need to do a smart unlocking. That smart unlocking has to be done in a phased manner so that we have a reasonable control over the amount of population we are actually asking to come out into the common areas. So I think these results are encouraging, and we are seeing decreased number of cases coming to the hospitals as well. However, the critical cases which require intensive care are still there, and all our ICUs are still running to almost on near capacity. Obviously, that is a worry still, that we still have got some patients who are quite critical in the hospitals.
Yes, I agree. And that is one thing that we must keep in mind, the burden on the healthcare infrastructure, because even now, from my conversations with other experts, we understand that a large percentage or a significant percentage of those who are in Mumbai hospitals are those coming from MMR region, because there is literally non-existent healthcare infrastructure in some of these satellite towns outside of Mumbai. And so they are also needing the help from the Mumbai hospitals as well. Dr. Joshi, what's your view on the statistics that have been reported in the last couple of days?
I think I agree with both my panelists. And you just said that MMR and Mumbai are conjoined twins. They are inseparable twins. So they have 2 crore population. We have around 1.5 crore population. Till we do not get MMR under control, we can't unlock Mumbai at all. And till we have a robust immunity, it is very difficult to unlock. But I think clearly the numbers are clear. The number of tests, we have an open testing policy now, so all the labs can test. There is no restriction on testing, and still the numbers are low. So I think we have antigen tests available now. We have many more avenues of testing available. Still, the positivity rate is low. We can clearly see the decline. So the first peak is over and it has plateaued out. Okay, whether when we unlock, there would be a second peak is what we need to mitigate. And that is why very wisely the government has taken a decision that for 1 more week, 1 more month till the 31st of August, they are going to keep things locked. And very gradually they are going to start the unlocking. So they are doing a strategic, mindful unlocking, and that will be staying there probably August, September, till the MMR is under control and till we are able to have some degree of semblance there. Otherwise, it is impossible, because minute we open up and MMR flows into Mumbai, we'll be back to square one again.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's something that the policymakers have to keep in mind, and people also have to keep in mind. From Mumbai, the infection spread to the surrounding areas, and by the time we were beginning to come out of the woods, it's the rest of MMR that got into trouble. And we're so deeply connected that we have to keep it in mind that any policy has to be for the entire part only when everybody else seems to be in a better position. But thank you so much to all three of our panelists. It's been an insightful conversation with you on the statistics and the future for Mumbai and what these Sero survey results really show. Suffice to say, viewers, a lot more of these surveys, just like we found when we had the conversation about Delhi and the Sero survey that was conducted there, a lot more of these in a broader base level will have to be done. Even for us to conclude anything on herd immunity is very difficult right now, because as you heard the experts, the antibodies don't seem to be staying on for too long, and the minute they vanish, then the question about immunity arises again. So let's wait and watch how the research progresses, what the data further shows, and how more Sero surveys, when they're conducted, what kind of data they show to us. For now, it's a wrap on this conversation as we move on to our other big story. Well, let's get you all the top developments in Sushant death mystery right now. A team of Bihar police have recorded Sushant's ex-girlfriend Ankita Lokhande's statement at her residence in Mumbai. In fact, Neha Kulkarni has been tracking that story for us, and she's joining me live from outside Ankita Lokhande's residence. Neha, take us through the details.
Absolutely, Tanvi. It's been an eventful day as far as the investigation by the Bihar police team is concerned in Mumbai. It's been their second day here. We understand that this 4-member team has been visiting a lot of places, and today it was their day when they visited at least 3 banks in Mumbai. All of these 3 which have allegedly the accounts of late actor Sushant Singh Rajput. And we understand that the financial trail here has been tried to be established by the Bihar police team, wherein they have tried to get records of the financial trail between Sushant Singh Rajput and that of Rhea Chakraborty to establish whether there was any siphoning of funds as alleged by Sushant's father. But right now where we are reporting from is, as you mentioned, ex-girlfriend Ankita Lokhande's building. We understand about 2 hours ago, a team from Bihar police, which is right now in Mumbai, had made its headway here. They had come here to question and also take statement of Ankita Lokhande, who, according to our for our viewers, let's tell them that has been making claims about how there needs to be a thorough inquiry into this case, and how when yesterday she had also put up a social media post saying that she is thankful for the fact that just truth is prevailing, considering the Bihar police has taken another angle in the investigation. So yes, they were here about 2 hours ago. They recorded her statement, we understand, and now she has made her point clear as far as what she thinks about the investigation is concerned. At the same time, in the morning, we understand that there were 3 separate branches that the Bihar police team had been to, which include the HDFC, ICICI and also Kotak Mahindra, wherein the records of late actor Sushant Singh Rajput are there, and to get a hold of the case, they were there out there. In fact, when Mirror Now exclusively spoke to these police officials, they also mentioned that each of the persons who's been concerned with Sushant Singh Rajput's career right from his struggling days, all of them will try to be they will try to track them down. They will try to ensure that they have any communication with them, and definitely his bank records is something that they will try to get a hold of, because that is something where the essential blame by Sushant Singh Rajput's father, wherein whether or not this kind of siphoning was done, whether or not the theft that his father has been claiming that Rhea Chakraborty has made has happened or not, to get evidence of that, they are ensuring that they get the right financial trail papers from these banks.
Okay, stay on with me, Neha. I'm going to come back to you in just a bit, but I also want to play out this exclusive conversation that you've had with the police inspector who's part of this team. The Bihar police has intensified its probe in this case, as Neha was just telling you. In this exclusive conversation, he revealed that they will talk to all of those who are associated with Sushant right from his struggling days, exactly like what Neha was telling us right now, that before they actually take any concrete decisions and make any arrests, they're going to dig a lot more deeper into Sushant's history. Listen in.
We are joined here with Manoranjan Bharti, Inspector Police from Rajiv Nagar Police Station in Patna. Sir, thank you so much for speaking to Mira Now. Sir, काफ़ी चहल पहल हुई है 2 दिनों में. अगर आप ऊपर से बता सके कि बेसिकली अभी तक कितने लोगों से बात की गई है और वो कौन है?
No, ma'am, we are collecting evidence. Whatever content have been given in FIR, we are just probing through all those points. We are collecting. Basically, we are doing our investigation to collect evidences.
Who are the people who've been questioned?
No, I think yesterday some family member was interrogated.
Have you also spoken to his chef?
No.
Any people who were there inside the house when Sushant Singh committed suicide?
No.
We understand 6 people have been questioned till now.
No. Only one.
Only one? Only the sister? Sir, any update about meeting Riya Chakraborty or talking to her? Because we understand she's not at her house. Is that right?
It's a matter of investigation. The process is going on. Time will come when time will permit. We will do that.
Does the records show that there was a transaction to Riya Chakraborty's account of 15 crores?
It will take time. We have to study. We have to receive it also.
So multiple banks you all visited. Why so?
Wherever, I have told you, wherever, whenever, whatever evidence will be available for us, either it is documentary or in any form, we will try to get it.
How many more people are likely to be questioned? Even if it's friends, acquaintances?
Right from his struggle, when he started his struggle, right from that time we are trying to search those persons. We are trying to search, and whoever will be available, we will go, we will pursue, and we will try to regard them.
Well, let's also get you details of the plea that has been filed by Riya Chakraborty in the top court, and that's what we've accessed right now. Let's also look at what Riya Chakraborty's version is to this entire death mystery, and she seems to suggest that the entire FIR is false and concocted, that she herself was the one who had actually earlier demanded a CBI probe. She, being somebody who was in a relationship with Sushant, is now being victimized by the social media. In fact, we're going to get you more details of this entire petition that we have accessed, and Mira Now has the details with it and of what Riya Chakraborty has to tell the top court. Remember, Riya Chakraborty has moved the Supreme Court, saying that the case should be transferred to Mumbai, that it's not the Bihar police that should be investigating this case. She herself was the one, in fact, who on 16th of July was tweeted tagging the Home Minister, seeking a CBI probe, saying, I am Sushant's girlfriend and I suspect that something has gone terribly wrong here and needs a fair independent investigation by the CBI. But now the things have completely turned upside down. She herself has been named and accused in the abetment of suicide case that's been filed by the Bihar police right now, which is investigating this case. Meenakshi Bhanja joins us with the exclusive details of Riya Chakraborty's petition in the top court. Meenakshi.
Well, that's right, Tanvi. This is the first time we are seeing Riya Chakraborty's version come out in the public domain. And this is very important given the fact that sometime in the next week, we are expecting for this transfer petition to be listed for a hearing. And today, remember, 2 states have got involved. Earlier in the evening, it was Bihar government which has decided to file a caveat in this case, opposing Chakraborty's plea, seeking for the transfer to Mumbai. And like you rightly mentioned, this is a 56-page transfer petition we are in possession of, where she's going on to say, and she's admitting at one point, that she was in a year-long relationship with the deceased, in this case Sushant Singh Rajput, and is herself in a state of trauma from the incident. A petitioner and the deceased last resided together on 8/6/2020 when the petitioner temporarily moved to her Santa Cruz residence. So once she's saying that they were in a live-in relationship, she went back to her residence on the 8th of July 2020, Tanvi. And the second part, which you are referring to most significantly, she is falling back on these series of tweets that she made out from her personal handle on the 16th/7/2020 at 3:56 p.m. in the afternoon, where she tagged the Home Minister, Mr. Amit Shah, and she is relying on that to say as to how she herself was imploring and beseeching the Home Minister to order for a CBI probe into this incident. So she's relying on this series of tweets to try and showcase her bona fides in a way to try and impress upon the Supreme Court that indeed, if there was something hanky-panky involved from her end, why would she be making a plea of this nature to the Home Minister of the country? The third important aspect here, Tanvi, is how she is also citing she's going to cite a series of trolling instances that she encountered in the social media. She's saying as to how these left her completely in a state of trauma. She says that she has been called a gold digger, she's been called a murderer, she's been shamed, and but at the end of the day, all this has had an accumulated mental impact on her. Thirdly, she's saying this, Anvi, that Mumbai is the place where this incident happened. And Mumbai police was the first body or the law enforcement agency which got involved in probing this case. It is the Metropolitan Magistrate Mumbai which has complete and total jurisdiction of probing this entire incident. Most importantly, she's also making the argument as to how she does not feel a fair probe will be meted out to her by the state of Bihar, because she says that she is being harassed. That is her version in this 56-page transfer petition that has been filed in the Supreme Court, where we now know that the state of Bihar will be also opposing her plea. So technically, two state governments will be involved, or rather locking horns in the Supreme Court pertaining to Sushant Singh Rajput's case of suicide thus far, Tanvi. So those are the interesting aspects. Another interesting aspect is she is completely denying all the grounds that have been laid out in the FIR vis-a-vis the state of Bihar. She's saying that the family are now making allegations against her in a Bihar FIR is something which is completely malafide and wholly untrue. Back to you.
Yes, in fact, what she had earlier also mentioned on publicly, even before this entire case blew up, she's added to that, and one can imagine that it's only worsened, that she started to receive various death threats and rape threats, and that she is in deep trauma due to the loss of the deceased, of course, who she was in a relationship with, and that has now multiplied further because of the way the case is actually being covered. But Meenakshi, even as she builds this case to deny everything that the Bihar police FIR and the complaint copy really says, is she at any point in this petition still seeking the CBI probe that she had earlier sought?
Well, Tanvi, as of now, remember what has happened today has been very interesting. There was a random PIL that was filed in the Supreme Court by a PIL petitioner earlier in the morning. That PIL was seeking a CBI probe, and the Supreme Court promptly junked that PIL that point in time today morning, where the Supreme Court said that the police should be allowed to do its job. It is not a question of who is right or who is wrong, but it is a question of jurisdiction. So, Tanvi, the central agencies or the union government usually has a lot of say and might when it comes to litigating and seeking for CBI probes, as we have seen in the case of the Vikas Dubey encounter play out in the Supreme Court. Of course, that's a judicial probe, but a separate judicial probe nonetheless that has happened with the sanction of the Supreme Court and with the agreement of the state government of Uttar Pradesh. As of now, Tanvi, this is a transfer petition, because remember, it is only the Supreme Court of India which has transfer powers. Transfer of a case from A venue to B venue or C venue is a jurisdiction solely vested in the Supreme Court of India. And therefore, since it is just a transfer petition which is seeking for essentially multiple FIR, like the Bihar Police FIR is a second FIR which is arising from the same occurrence or the same cause. And this is arising in the backdrop of a FIR already having been registered first by the Maharashtra police. So she is essentially saying that there have been past precedents in India in case laws which says that multiple FIRs from the same cause of action should not be permitted against anyone. And once a matter has been initiated, once one jurisdiction has been invoked already in law, the second jurisdiction is not made out for the same cause of action. So this is what the transfer petition for now is saying, Tanvi. And we have brought to our viewers the main grounds that Ria is making, namely how she's admitting she was in a live-in relationship till 8th of June. Then she shifted out to her own house. Secondly, she says she made out herself a series of tweets to the Home Minister seeking for a CBI probe to showcase her bona fides. She's saying that she has been subject to a lot of trauma in the backdrop of all that has transpired. And thirdly, she is making out the jurisdiction exclusively of Maharashtra to have adjudication powers in this case. And she's obviously saying that she is willing to cooperate as need may be going forward in future.
Okay, let's also talk about the other aspect, Meenakshi, that you mentioned, and which has also happened just in the last couple of hours, which is the Bihar government that has now filed its own caveat, and this fight, like as you were pointing out, will now play out in Supreme Court about who should really be investigating this case. Should it be the Mumbai police? Should it be the Bihar police who leads the case, who investigates the case, or the Mumbai police that's been looking into the case for the past 40 days but hasn't really filed an FIR? Meenakshi, what happens next in the top court? Do we know when the hearing is slotted? Because now obviously even the Bihar government has filed a caveat.
Well, yes, absolutely. You see, Tanvi, tomorrow is Friday, which is a miscellaneous day. And so far, the counsels from both sides, including Riya Chakrabarty's side, have not shown an urgency to have the matter heard or listed at the earliest. So being a miscellaneous day, tomorrow there is no scope for a hearing. Saturday, Sunday is the weekend. Monday is Raksha Bandhan, which is the 3rd of August. So anytime after 3rd of August, there is a possibility that the matter may come up for hearing in its natural course in the Supreme Court. We can confirm to our viewers that former Attorney General Mukul Rohatgi will be representing the state of Bihar, Tanvi, when this matter is taken up for hearing and arguments in the foreseeable future. We are confirming to our viewers it will be sometime going forward in the next week beginning or after the 3rd of August, after Raksha Bandhan. And the third most important part is this, that the Supreme Court will first go into the merits of, if at all, there have been any deliberate lapses or lacuna in the Maharashtra state's investigations thus far. Riya is already claiming in her plea that she does not anticipate a free and fair probe. She's already highlighting as to how she herself has undergone a lot of duress and trauma. She's highlighting her bona fides by way of her past conduct, Tanvi, which brings into focus the series of tweets to the Home Minister himself. And therefore, it is going to be hugely interesting. And case law-wise, as far as legal precedent in India goes, Tanvi, it will be the Supreme Court, obviously, which will be taking a call finally to see if the investigations initiated by the state of Maharashtra are on the right track or not.
All right, Meenakshi Pancham, we're going to be keeping a close track on what happens in the Supreme Court along with all the developments here in Mumbai. Only fact-based reportage of the legal action, the police action that is being done in Sushant's death mystery. No speculation here on Mirror Now of what really led to that suicide, what were the circumstances, and who possibly could be speaking the truth here. We're going to take a very short break. On the other side, lots of other big stories lined up for you. Stay with me.